Hello, everyone. How are you? Hope you're doing well. My name is Carl. I'm here on behalf of the TEFL org. We are a teacher training company. We help people to become English as a foreign language teachers. So if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, then you're in the right place for this live webinar, where for the next sort of hour or so, I'll be talking about using technology in the classroom. I'm here in Northern Ireland, where I work as an online teacher. I work as a face-to-face teacher. I work as an English examiner and a teacher trainer. Please let us know where you are in the world. It's always good to know. I see some people saying hello already. Yes, Sunil, we wish you a happy Diwali as well. Please do let us know where you are in the world. It's always good to know. And let us know if you use technology in the classroom as well. What tools do you use? In what sort of situations do you use it? The more chat we get in the live stream, the better it will be. It all comes up on my screen, and any live questions I will also try to answer. So please do get your questions in early, because the earlier you get them in, the more likely we are to answer them. Alan is monitoring the chat, and he will also put some links in. So yes, hello Sunil and Chennai. Hi Jeff in Charlotte, North Carolina. David's in Lincolnshire. Hi. Irene, I hope I said that right, is in Greece. Charles in Chicago. Chris is in Albans. Everyone's saying hello. Great to see. Right, let me just get this PowerPoint up. There we go. So using technology in the classroom. So I'm going to talk a bit about some sort of tips that I have and just some sort of overall thoughts. And then I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 actual tools that I've used in the classroom that I find quite interesting. If you have used them, please let us know to see as well. Right, okay, so first of all, why use technology? And I mean, obviously, people think nowadays that everyone's got to use technology, but you know, when I was at school, we didn't really have technology in the classroom. We didn't have the internet till I was about sort of 16, 17, I think it was. So there was no sort of usage of tools. And you know, I think we learned quite well. So why actually use technology here in 2024? And I think that the main reason is that it's a useful tool to help enhance teacher and learning. It's not going to technology doesn't replace the teacher. Technology, I believe, enhances and helps the teacher to teach. It also helps the student to learn. And I think that's the most important aspect of using technology in the classroom. It is also nowadays expected by the schools and students. I'm pretty sure that every interview I've had for any sort of teaching position, universities, language schools over the last sort of 15 years has included the question, what technology do you use in the classroom, or how do you use technology in the classroom? It is expected by the schools, and also students expect it. I think nowadays that if a student goes to a class and there's no sort of technology being used, then generally they feel they're not getting good value for money. And that also counts with one-on-one teaching. Yes, if you're doing online one-on-one teaching, you use technology in Zoom or Skype, whatever it is you're using. But I believe there are extra tools that you can add to online teaching as well, which can enhance their learning. Can also help with autonomous learning. I talked a bit about this in other webinars, and I think this is really, really important, especially for people going into English for academic purposes. Basically, autonomous learning is them learning themselves, teaching themselves. And I think that using technology in the classroom and for homework can help students to learn when they've left your class, when they've left the school that you're going to. They can see the good websites. They can see how technology can be used to teach themselves. And I think that really helps them going forward. It's also pretty useful to add a different pace to the lessons. If you've got quite a hectic kids class where you're playing lots and lots of games, and then you put in a little activity that involves 10, 15 minutes of using a computer somehow or using mobile phones, it does lower the pace, which I think is quite important for kids classes, especially to, you know, keeping them on their toes and keeping the energy level high. It also can help with adults as well. If that you've had a few intense lessons where they've had to work quite hard, they've had lots of homework, then you do an activity in class that can they can do it at their own time, at their own speed, definitely can help these students to learn more effectively. It can also help different learning styles. Now, might not be something you thought about, but it is quite important when we learn. Some of us learn through writing, some learn through listening, reading, speaking. I don't particularly like using a pen and writing. I've never really worked quite well with that. I've always preferred to use a typewriter, or I use a keyboard. Typewriter, show me age there. Using a keyboard. So I always find that using a word processor helps a lot more than using a pen and paper. And, you know, it can also help students that are a bit more visual to see things up on a screen. Right, some things to consider. Right, don't underestimate or overestimate the technology level of your students. As in, don't expect all of your students to be computer literate, to know how to use word processors, to know how to use shared documents, all this kind of thing. Be prepared for some students to not know how to do that in 2024, okay? Even if you've got a class full of teenagers and you think, well, they're obviously going to know a lot more than me, you'll be surprised at how many don't really know how to use a computer that well. Now, you will get some in there that know how to use it perfectly and can show you how to do things that you hadn't thought of doing, but many don't know the tech that well. Also, many have only ever used mobile phones. They don't know how to use computers, okay? And this can cause problems for you if you're going to do a lesson and you expect them all to learn and know how to use technology, and actually they don't really have a clue, and you have to spend a lot of your time actually teaching them the tech before you teach them the language. All right. The devices that your school has. Now, don't expect the school that you're going to, if you're going to go work abroad in a country, or you're going to go work in your own country, don't expect necessarily for your school to have lots and lots of laptops, lots and lots of tablet computers, okay? Also, don't expect them to necessarily be that new. Don't expect, if they haven't been used for a while, don't expect for them to have been updated. You know, sometimes you turn it on and there's updating, it's updating. That can take a while. So just be a bit careful before you start planning what technology you use. Make sure that the devices that your school has is really up to the level. Also, the students' devices. As I said before, I've taught many people who only want to learn on mobile phones. They contact me for one-on-one lessons through Skype, Zoom, whatever tool I was using at the time, and they say they want to use a mobile phone. Now, they can see me, fantastic. Tough to type on a mobile phone. It's also difficult to switch between applications, have different windows open on most mobile phones. Also, a lot of mobile phones can be older. You have different types of operating systems. All this kind of thing is important. So if you go into a new school in a new country, just sort of don't try and get technology in the first couple of lessons. Find out what they use. If you're doing one-on-one lessons online, I really would say to you, check what technology they have before you accept that student. It can be very, very tough to do exam prep classes on mobile phones. Conversation classes, listening classes, slightly different, but doing exam type classes can be quite difficult on mobile phones. The internet speed and the connection, it sounds like, it sounds obvious, but many countries I've worked in has not had effective, constant internet connections. And if you plan a lesson and that lesson revolves around you having to watch YouTube for 50 minutes and you haven't downloaded the video, and then the internet goes, what are you going to do? Check your internet speed, check the connection, and make sure you have a backup if those things go down. Also, your ability to help when something goes wrong. I think I'm quite good with tech, but if something goes wrong, I know how to fix it. It's another thing altogether to explain to someone on the other end of a Zoom call or to explain to 10 kids in a classroom or 10 adults in the classroom how to fix something that's gone wrong with the tech. You know, something's not been installed properly. The window has disappeared. They don't know how to access a chat box. Get yourself prepared to do this. Now, for some exams I have it written in the student's first language and I hold it up. Things like "you are on mute," but written in another language, or "look in the chat box," written in another language. That sort of thing can help. But be ready to basically and simply talk them through the tech and how the tech works if something goes wrong. Okay. The hellos are coming in. It's so nice to still see them. Please say hello in the chat. Really good to see people. Also, if you've got any questions at all, please do put them in there as well. And if you've used tech, let us know what you've used. Right. So last thing to talk about is planning time. It can be a quick way of planning a lesson to use technology. All right. It can help you out if you're a bit short on planning time for a lesson. Lots of tech has sort of quizzes that you can store up yourself. You log in, they're already there from when you used them before. Fantastic, works really well. Once you've written them once, it can, you can use them over and over again. Brilliant, fantastic, really good. However, writing the tech, writing the quizzes can take up a bit more time, can take longer than producing a worksheet. However, there are tech websites that will help you. Just something to bear in mind is that, like, at the start, planning technology into the classroom can take a little bit of time, the actual planning aspects of it. Right. And so one that I like using is like a virtual learning environment, which is Google Classroom. Okay. Now, basically, this is run by Google, and it's a place to sort of store lots of different educational tools in. All right. It is free to use for basic use. Right. Some of the problems is you've got to have a Google account. That's a student as well as you to use that. Okay. Now, some students I found are really against signing up for new accounts. They're like, well, wait there, I've got a Yahoo, I've got a Hotmail, or I've got an Outlook. Why do I need to also have a Gmail? Obviously, using Google Classroom, they expect you to have a Google account. So that's something to be aware of. Okay. Some aspects are not free. Also, some aspects need you to have a certain educational level in terms of the school you work for. Basically, the school you work for has to let Google know that they're a school and have to prove that they're a school. There are ways around that. I think that works pretty well. Okay, so it is free. Fantastic. It also links pretty well with other tech tools, such as Google Documents. It links pretty well. Google Sheets, all this kind of thing. You can get them coming up on the Google Classroom, and it works pretty well. You can embed videos, that thing pretty well. It's really good for monitoring and uploading assignments. So you can create quizzes in it to check that your students are learning the vocabulary that you've taught them. You can get them to upload. If you're saying, right, okay, next week you've got to write an essay, the essay's got to be in by next week, or business English, you've got to write an email. They can upload it really well to Google, and you can mark it. You can give them feedback really well in terms of using Google Classroom. You don't have to have loads of printouts. You haven't got to sit there with a pen and paper. You could keep the marking consistent, and you can give it a grade really easily. Google Classroom works well. You can also sort of, when they come into the classroom, you can get them to log into Google Classroom, and all their activities for the day are up there. Fantastic. Quizzes that are automatically marked. So, right, you do a listening test, for example, and in the old days, you'd hand out a piece of paper. You would have to go through as a teacher and write it, correct it, yes or no, tick, cross that. That can take an hour of your life. Not a huge amount of time, but it can do. Google Classroom can mark all those things automatically for you. And then that way you're not spending a lot of time marking. And the last thing that I think is really important in the current climate is it can check plagiarism. It can check whether your student has just put into ChatGPT, write me an essay about this. Google can check that, and then you can say to your student, well, wait there, this has been plagiarized. you have either copied this from somewhere, or you've got someone else to make it for you, or that you've got some tech to make it for you. And it can say, well, look, you don't then mark it. You say to the student, right, you've got to do it again. Really, really important, again, if they're going to go to university in the future. So Google Classroom is definitely worth checking out. Right, now the next one isn't necessarily some sort of major tool that you might have heard of, some sort of major tool that you haven't heard of, sorry. It's something that we all use, and it's YouTube and different podcasts. I use them a lot for listening comprehension. You can find a lot of stuff on YouTube, and you can find a lot of really good podcasts on whatever podcast provider you do. You can shorten them, you can speed them up, you can repeat them. Really, really good for listening comprehension. You can also, using ChatGPT or some other AI device, you can get them to write questions about a listening text as well. Really simple, really easy. One of the really good things to use in the classroom is you watch practice exams. So if they are going to be heading to do some sort of exam in the future, Trinity, IELTS, Cambridge, something like this, you can get up on the big screen. They can watch the exam. You can stop it. You can ask them some questions. You can get them to fill in forms. What happens? That kind of thing. What did this student do well? What did this student do badly? You can watch practice exams. It's really, really useful for exam classes. Also, you can sort of do it for a bit for business English. You can Google some sort of business meetings. They're not the most fluid of businesses meetings you'll ever see, but there are plenty on YouTube, and they can stop and do kind of things like that. You can also use YouTube and podcasts to learn cultural lessons and cultural ideas for whatever country they can visit in the future. You can use it for listening to music, and you can watch to get ideas for topics. This can be a bit of an issue. That students don't really have the ideas to develop in their speaking or their listening. Sorry, their speaking or their writing. Watching them to get topics is really good. And it also can be used as part of a flipped classroom. Now, this works well with something like Google Classroom. Basically, a flipped classroom is where the students do the learning outside the classroom. So if you're teaching some sort of grammar point, you would find a YouTube video that explains the grammar point really well. You might put that into Google Classrooms. You might put a couple of quiz questions that go after it. The students then, the night before the lesson, watch this YouTube video about a grammar point. They complete the couple of quizzes you've put on Google Classroom. They then come into the classroom with the knowledge of what the grammar point is. And what you do is the control practice, the freer practice. You get them practicing and you do the error correction on that. That's what a flipped classroom is. And that's something that is, quite useful and quite a different way of doing things. And it also, if you're new to teaching, you can get this, it stops you having to stand at a board explaining what the past perfect continuous is. They can learn that themselves and they can watch it over and over again. So flipped classrooms works pretty well there with YouTube and podcasts. Right. Kahoot. So talking about a few sort of websites and apps that you can get for your phones. Okay. So Kahoot is one that I came across in lockdown, and I think it's grown and it's got better, basically. Now, what it really does, Kahoot, is online quizzes. So, you could, for example, have 20 questions, and let's just say you're doing a grammar review. You could have 20 sentences and they have to decide which you give them a multiple choice, which is the verb, which word is the verb. Give them multiple choice, which tense is this in? Or you can give them multiple choice, which word is incorrect. They click on that, comes up on the screen. There's lots of they do it on their phones. It comes up on the screen. Works really cool, works really well. It also brings an element of competition into the classroom, which can add a bit of motivation, especially amongst kids. It's also, it's a really good, fun way of making quizzes. It also fosters teamwork. You could give them one device between 4 of them. They have to decide between them, something like that. You can put them in teams as well, I think, on Kahoot, which helps. There are many ready-to-go quizzes on there. So there are lots of quizzes. So if you're doing, and this works with EFL, so if you're doing a quiz, there's loads of quizzes as well on like geography, history, but there's also loads of quizzes on like grammar, vocabulary. And people have written them, they've uploaded them to Kahoot, and you know, you can just think, well, okay, I've got 10 minutes to do. What can I do? Right, let's do this Kahoot quiz that I found on the past simple. Let's do this quiz I've found on vocabulary for animals, whatever it might be. However, you do have to check the quality. They are written by someone generally, and who knows whether that person has done it correctly or not. But there are many ready to go quizzes that work really well on Kahoot. Can also be used remotely. So it doesn't have to be necessarily classes, people that are in the classroom with you. So you could, for example, be teaching 4 people on Zoom, and you've got one, you put up this like a QR code, or you put like a link up to the Kahoot quiz. The 4 kids or the 4 adults are there on their phones, and you see them, and it comes up on your screen, even though they're on the other side of the world. Okay, so it can be used really, really remotely. It works really, really well. Worth playing around with that one, Kahoot. Also, doesn't have to be live. You can set the quiz and say, okay, you've then got a week to do the quiz. Yeah, something like that. It doesn't have to be live. It can take a few days out of your time. Okay, epals.com. Now, I haven't used this for a while because I think it works well with big classes, and I haven't really had many big classes. But I have used it before in the past when I lived in Asia, for example. Right, so what it is a pen pal matching service. So when I was a young lad, you'd have a pen pal. I had a pen pal in Israel. Whoever knows, I have no idea what happened to him. And we would write letters to each other, and we would post them to each other, basically. Okay. And nowadays, obviously, things are a lot more quicker than sending things through the post. And it's basically a pen pal matching service. Now, what you can do with this is sign up a whole class. So you go on this website, and there will be someone, for example, I saw someone in Ukraine today. A teacher in Ukraine was trying to get pen pals for her class in Ukraine. And you might have a group of Vietnamese students in Vietnam. You think, okay, they're about a similar level to those Ukrainians, they're of a similar age. Let's get them writing to each other, practicing their writing, practicing their reading. Really cool, really fun. You can select classes by age, and you can select classes by level in terms of their language level. Now, there's no test for this. So it's the language level that you say your students are, and it's the language level that they say their students are. And also like level of schooling. So sort of, which kind of is age, I guess, but you can also do that as well. Now, it's fun. It is fun doing. Okay. However, it does take some setting up and correspondence with another teacher. So it's not as if like you think, okay, I've got 20 minutes to do. Right, I've heard of this thing called ePals. Let's get them going on that. You have to sort of correspond to the teacher. You have to get them set up. You have to, you know, say, I've got this class. How's your class? Let's go. Should we start it this week? Whatever it might be. I didn't personally, but I do know of some people on there that did it instantly. They said, okay, right. Oh, well, look, you've got this class at 10 a.m. time, Los Angeles time. I've got it at 9 p.m. China time. That kind of works. Or I don't know. I'm doing the time difference in my head, so that might not work at all. But we're going to be online at the same time. Let's see if we can get some instant chat going. That sort of thing is pretty cool. But the majority of it is sending via emails or instant messages with not an instant reply. There is an element of luck involved in this because you've got, yes, the teacher might be really, really keen. But if the students aren't really, really keen and your students are really keen and you match them up and they don't really reply, it can sort of fizzle out a bit. Now, you could contact the teacher and say, well, look, someone is not talking, someone is not replying. That's okay. But there is sort of an element of luck because hopefully that teacher will then fix it, but who knows? Okay. Right. Educaplay. Now, I hope I pronounced that right. Right. This is a little bit like Kahoot, that there's quizzes on it. I don't think it's as interactive as Kahoot. What I think that this is good for is sort of creating sort of worksheets that aren't a sheet. So they're worksheets that come up on a screen, basically. And there is a variety of different tools that you could then use in the classroom. For example, and there's loads of ones that aren't necessarily applicable to language learning, but crosswords works pretty well. Works really well with vocabulary. You could sort of think, okay, these are the 20 words we've learned in the last couple of weeks or the last couple of lessons. You could put a definition up there. They have to then write in the word that matches the definition. Word searches, really good with young kids. If you've ever have a moment in your young kids classes where, oh, sorry, need some water. If you ever have a moment in your young kids classes where it's all got a bit boisterous, it's all got a bit mad, and you need to calm them all down, get out of word search. That works really well with a lot of ages up to about sort of 10 to 12. So really good. And you know, they go on the screen and they can highlight them on the screen basically. And you know, you could use that on a big interactive whiteboard in the classroom, or if there's computers in the classroom, you can get them to do that. Use mobile phones, whatever. Right, matching pairs. This is really, really good for vocabulary and grammar activities. So you've got half a sentence on one side, half a sentence on the other side. They have to link. That kind of thing works really well. Word and definition, all that kind of works really well. There's loads of spelling activities in terms of making anagrams, jumbling up the letter order. They have to put them in the right order. Spelling activity is really, really important for lots of exam classes. Right, this is quite a cool one. Khan Academy. So this is like a school, basically. It's not for profit. They don't take any money out of it. And it is learning basically aimed at kids. Or if you're going to go down the route of using it with adults, then it does really sort of have quite low levels. Okay. You know, some of the subject matter isn't that advanced. Okay. There are lots of different subjects. So if you find yourself in a school where you're also teaching a little bit of science, a little bit of maths, there's also things on there for that. Okay. It's great for reading and vocabulary. So there will be reading activities where they have to then answer some questions to learn about comprehension and also do some work on the vocabulary that they've read in it. And you'll see, if you log into that, you'll see that there's different levels in terms of it. And now it's not really aimed for people who are learning English as a foreign language. So what you could do is you sort of go a couple of years lower. So if you're at grade 5 in senior school or high school, go down and sort of look at the grade 2 ones, for example, see if that's about the level that matches with your students. Okay. And you'll see, obviously, the lower levels are better. The lower the number, the better it is for lower level EFL learners. You'll see once you log in. I didn't explain that very well, but it is good for reading and vocabulary. Check the level links with your students before you do it. And you can do these in class, as in you can say, right, everyone, here's the link, go on there, work on this, do some reading, see how you go. You can also put it into a flipped classroom. You can also put it into Google Teams and all that sort of, Google Classroom, all that kind of thing. Also, you can monitor who the students make up an account, and you can monitor who's logged in. You can monitor who has read it and who has actually done it. So it's really good for checking on homework. Really, really useful. Okay. Right. Some final thoughts. Okay. Always have a backup to any tech you're going to be doing in the classroom. Don't expect it to work. What are you going to do if it doesn't work? And that could be just as simple as, okay, if it's not going to work, we're just going to open our textbooks and do something from our textbooks. Fine. You've done this amazing plan. You get into the classroom, the internet's not working. You're in trouble. Okay, what we got to do? Let's get a textbook. Let's open it. Okay. Always have a backup. Always have backup if your tech doesn't work. If you're teaching online, what were you going to do if something doesn't work? Okay, you know, you say, right, you're going to do a Kahoot quiz. Kahoot doesn't work for some strange reason. It's never happened to me, but it doesn't work, or the students can't log in. It's not accessible from their country. All that thing, always have a backup. I think don't let tech be a distraction. It can be quite easy to just throw tech at it and you just think, okay, right, let's just do some tech here. How does it help? How does it help them, the student? Don't let it be a distraction as well. Don't get them to just be off on their phones. Okay, you've given them a tablet to use. You see that they're all listening to some latest Taylor Swift video or whoever is famous at this point in time, and they're not actually doing any learning. So you got to be really on top of that for not to be a distraction. Be prepared for problems at the start. The first time that you use Kahoot, the first time that you use Google Classroom, it's not going to go smoothly. Some won't be able to log in. Some will forget their password. Some won't have a Google account. Be prepared for it to start. Try and get them to set it up a couple of days beforehand, basically. So then you're not running around with 20 people trying to sort out their tech problems. However, once you are up and running, once they are logged in, once they've started looking around, you'll fly through it and it will really help you. And you will find also that the students help each other as well with the tech. Students like showing off that they know how to do something on the computer that others don't. Don't just think tech is for kids. It also works really, really well with adults, and lots of adults can really expect it. If you're doing one-on-one classes and you're doing extra tech, that adds a bit of value. They also say to their friends, well, look, I had a one-on-one lesson with Carl. It was fantastic. He also taught us how to do this. And look, this is great. Why don't you sign up with him? Can add to extra business. Finally factor in the prep time with it. As in, what are you going to do if it takes 20 minutes to get them all up and running on Google Classroom? Can you then roll it into the next lesson, the lesson that you're going to do? Just be a bit aware of that kind of thing. Right, thank you. I can see some great questions. Please do let any questions you have, please do come in. If you agree, if you disagree with me, or if you've used any of these, please do let us know. I should also say that yes, there's web links, which we've put which have come up there in the chat box. But also there's apps that can go, you click on the web link and it might take you to an app to download. Okay. Right. Hi, Raminda. Great question. What if during teaching some are more conversant with the technology and willing to be ahead of others on their PCs? So this is a bit like if you're doing a skill. So if you're doing a reading lesson and you find that some are better at reading than others, some are going to fly through the reading, some are not. Okay. And tech skills, some people are better at using technology than others are. Okay. Right. So you could get them to, if you're talking about like their ability to use the technology, then you can get them to teach each other a little bit, to help each other. However, don't just check that one of them is grabbing the mouse for the other one and doing it for them. It has to be a conversation to help them, okay, to go through it. If you're using, and the good thing with doing something like Kahoot is you could have a backup quiz for the fast finishers. In Google Classroom, you could put it in there. And then if someone has, if lots are finishing really, really quickly and some are quite slowly, you can just go onto the master account, the teacher's account, and release an extra quiz. They can then do that. Yeah. So there are lots of backups that you can do that. Just like if you had a fast finisher in your classroom, you might have an extra worksheet, or you might get them to check a reading activity, something like that. Just have a backup. Put that in your lesson plan, Raminda. Okay. David, hi. Do I think Zoom or Teams is better for online lessons? So they're slightly different in what they tend to do, I think. Okay. So I personally like using Zoom alongside Google Classrooms. Okay. That's what I like doing for my online lessons. However, I have worked for universities that use Teams and put everything within Teams, and that also works really well. I just like the control, and I think probably I should move more towards Teams and having it all within one, because I've used it and it has worked well. Now, you don't have to necessarily use Zooms. So Zoom is basically for one-on-one conversations, one-on-one or meetings, and you can have things like the chat box. It works really well, and there's a whiteboard on Zoom. All that thing works really well. However, it's not a virtual learning environment, so you can't sort of put quizzes that will release at certain times. They can't sort of work through a lesson like they can on Google Classroom. Okay, so you might put a video, but you can use Zoom alongside Google Classrooms, that there could be a link to the Zoom account. Now, Teams is sort of all of it in one. So you can sort of just get them to sort of have discussions that outside the live lessons. You can release different links and that kind of thing. They can contact each other. They can phone each other. Zoom, you have to sort of set up the meeting and things like that. So they are slightly different. I personally like Zoom, but let everybody else know, okay, if you disagree. Raminder's answered that question. David again, hi. Am I ever asked to teach other topics in English, not necessarily in state schools? So I have been asked to teach computer skills to people whose first language aren't English, because I have advertised a bit myself as someone that can help with that. I've got a bit of a background in it. Now, I have never worked for a school where they've asked me to also teach science or teach maths. I've never done that. Okay. But I have seen jobs advertised. And if you've got a degree in science, but you also want to teach EFL, it can be a string to your bow that you can apply for jobs where they're saying that they want a science teacher. I've done webinars where I actually talk about that. So you do teach other lessons to people. You do teach other subjects to people whose first language is not English. It's not something I have a huge amount of experience with, but I have seen jobs advertised that do it. Now, some schools abroad, like an international school, might want you to have a specific teaching qualification. Others don't know. They're just quite happy for you to have a TEFL qualification and the knowledge of teaching the other subject. Okay. So I need that, what I said about having to teach sort of computer skills, but not really beyond that myself. But there are jobs out there. Okay. Jeffrey, hi. Let me see if I can get this one highlighted. Yep. Are there any screen recording sites that make it easier to change the virtual backgrounds for your lessons? Right. So I personally don't like using the virtual backgrounds. Okay. I think that they can take up processing power on your computer. I also have not found any that I think look good. Now, screen recording sites. So I use a Mac and I use, I think it's a QuickTime to do my screen recordings. So that works pretty well for me. On a Windows, I'm not necessarily sure of what I would use to record. And also, I don't know if there's any that will change the virtual backgrounds whilst you record. Like for live calls, I'm quite happy to use my background. Or I have a screen, which is like an old barber's. No, it's not. Yeah, no, barbershop was the wrong thing. Like an office divider screen, and I plonk that here, and you can't see behind me. I think that works pretty well, just to not show off my background, because I've worked for some exam boards that don't like having a guitar in the background, having books in the background, a picture that you went to a football match. They don't like that sort of thing, and they ask you to not have a background. And I find that just shutting it off myself works better than having the virtual backgrounds on. Okay. Also, I've played around with it, and the virtual backgrounds work better when what's behind you is clear. So I've got too much clutter really there for a virtual background, I find. However, please, if anyone can help Jeffrey with this, please do put it in the chat. And Jeffrey, also, please let me know if I did answer that question, because maybe I got the wrong end of the stick for it. Are there any more questions? I can't see any more questions there. I don't think so. But those ones that did come in were quite useful. Now, what I would say is, if you are going to set yourself up as an online teacher and you want to find your own students, I've done lots of webinars about that sort of thing. If you do want to find your own students, don't complicate the tech. Don't think you've got to have loads and loads of different, I've got to use this, and I've got to do a Kahoot quiz. Then I've got to get onto Google Classrooms. Then let me throw in that shared document. Right, okay, and then we're going to play a YouTube video. Now, they are nice, but it doesn't have to be all about using tech all the time. I have taught really effective, I believe, online lessons where I've just sent someone a PDF and we've gone through the PDF on a screen share together. Some students like that. It doesn't have to necessarily be, right, let's do this flashy thing here and then another flashy thing. It's always got to be something that reaches the goals of your lesson. Okay. And if you're using some sort of tech that isn't reaching the goals of the lesson or doesn't enhance their learning somehow, then you've got to think, why are you actually doing it? Yeah. Thank you. I think that's the end. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for tuning in as well. Please let us know if that was useful to you. I hope it was. Some good questions in there. Thank you for everyone that said hello as well. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I've done lots and lots of webinars on lots of different topics. And if you've got an idea for a topic, also please do put that in the chat. We're always open to having and listening to other ideas. We do one of these live webinars every week, sometimes every fortnight, but generally we do 2 or 3 a month on a variety of different topics, and we really like doing them. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. We also have a Facebook group where you can carry on the conversation and you can ask each other questions in that. Very, very useful. Have a good day. Bye-bye.